Hey everybody, welcome to the today's exciting webinar on vibe coding to learn. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, give everybody a chance to find us. But in the meantime, if you can open up your chat and put where you're dialing in from, it's always a good way to get started.
Tell us what the temperature is too.
Ooh.
Only because Kenny, right now it's about 100 Fahrenheit here.
You need to come to Seattle.
I know, I know, I know. Finally got rain after a month and a half.
Ooh, there you go.
Roger Snyder. Do we know him?
I've heard of him. I've heard of him. The legend. Welcome, everybody. We'll get going in just a minute or so. Those who just dialed in, put where you're from, and Dean wants to know how hot it is where you are. And you can put Celsius or Fahrenheit. We don't care.
I think it's 30. It's either 30 or 33
It's
C.
more than 30. 30 is only
Yeah.
like 87. It's closer to
Okay.
40.
Probably
You're
33.
closer to 40. All right. People are pouring in. This is great. A lot of people are interested in figuring out how to do vibe coding for product managers. They don't want to tell us where they're dialing in from, so that's all
I
right.
know.
That's okay. We'll deal
Yeah,
with
but
it.
they're going to want to get that chat box open and so they can ask questions, make
Definitely.
snarky remarks.
Dean needs lots of snarky remarks.
That's right. I live off them. I give out bonus points for funny remarks, even at my expense.
All right, we can dive in, Dean. Let's
Yeah, I
let's
think
get
so.
going. I think we've got a quorum.
All right,
We
let's
can get
go.
going.
I think we need
So
to introduce
first we'll
ourselves,
introduce
right?
ourselves. Yeah, I'll
Yes.
introduce me, then you can introduce you. My name is Kenny Kranseler. I'm going to be assisting Dean in our presentation today. I am a principal consultant and trainer as is Dean at Productside. Have been in product management, training product management, doing product management for the last, I don't know, 30 years or so. And I am excited to be here. As I noted in the chat, I am dialing in from just outside Seattle, Washington, and Bellevue, Washington.
Yeah. And even though I'm on the other side of the country here in sizzling Raleigh, North Carolina, we're both decades of experience in product management, both outcome obsessed. I think I've got only got 20 years of product management experience prior to coming to product side. However, I did have 15 years of software engineering experience before that, and then decided to come over to the dark side of product management, where I worked with a lot of data, a lot of connectors, a lot of APIs, a lot of AI, early AI that was very cruel, and just a lot of technologies. So, of course, when it came to now that we can vibe code, this is very exciting for me.
Dean's circled back. All right, before we dive into our webinar, some shameless plugs for us. I want to welcome you and give you a little information about product side. And at product side, we know how hard it is to deliver products that don't only get used, but actually users love to use them. So we have resources, whether you're figuring out how to align stakeholders, figuring out what your customer needs are, managing endless backlogs. We've seen a lot of it. And really, we're here to be your outcome-driven product partner that not only provides solutions, but actually make sure those solutions aren't generic solutions that are just sort of the way general people do product management, but how it works in your organizations. So we enable complete transformations. How do you turn your organization from being sales led or specific customer led to being product led? We tailor it to make sure that it fits your scenarios. And we got a bunch of folks who've been doing product management for a long time, have scars all over their backs, like Dean and I, to manage that process for you. And we are thrilled to have you all today. So we're going to dive in, make sure that we help your team thrive as we go along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and go ahead,
I've
Dean.
got, and I've got a question.
Yeah.
Can people ask questions?
Yes, they can. Yeah. So we always get that question. We will have a recording. The answer's up. If you've attended this webinar or even signed up for this webinar, you'll get the link to that recording. You can share that with other folks. We want this to just not be a live webinar, but something you can use all the time. During the session, we do want to hear from you. There's two ways you can reach out to us. One is there's a Q&A feature inside of Zoom that you can use. I'll be monitoring throughout, and if there's something that should be great at interrupting Dean, I have no qualms about doing that. So you don't have to wait until the end. If a question sparks to you, go ahead and ask it. There's also a chat where you can connect not only to us, but the other folks, the attendees that are on this webinar. You can ask your colleague questions, you can ask us questions, you can share your own experiences, or just cheer or be snarky to Dean. That's okay. So let's keep the energy up. Don't hold back. It really is your opportunity to get the most out of the session. But before we dig into today's topic, I want to give you an opportunity to invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll probably put a link to our LinkedIn in chat. There's also a QR code on the screen, hopefully right now. So you can connect with us on LinkedIn. It's more than a place to just follow Productside. It's really what we're trying to create as a community. And when you join that community, you'll have resources like leadership best practices that hopefully can inspire your growth at your organization. We'll have some conversations about the role of product management and some tips on how you can be more impactful as one. And it's really just sort of an opportunity network with other folks that are going through some of the same challenges you are. So again, you scan the QR code, click the link that it's in your chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts, swap
Yeah.
ideas, keep that conversation going.
And even connect to us.
Yeah.
Alrighty, here's our agenda for today. So we're going to have some, we did, Kenny always is always great introductions. We're going to have a poll in a second here, but then we're going to talk about everybody's vibing, but nobody's learning. Okay. And then from there, we're going to talk about shaping the story to shape the solution. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about low code versus coding agent approaches. If you don't know what those terms mean, we are going to explain them. We're going to show you a lot of different things today, a lot of different tools and techniques. So hang in there because at the very end, we have special offers and Q&A as well. So, Kenny, everyone's vibing.
Yeah,
Almost
they are.
nobody's learning. All right. I think
It's
you've
a new
seen it.
toy that
I've
people
seen
are
it.
playing with, that's all.
Oh, and I feel the exhaustion of that when I go onto LinkedIn and stuff, and it's like, who was I listening to? The guys at 37 Signals, their podcast. They're like, oh my goodness, another model came out. Can we not have all the breathless screaming about coding agents and models? And so everyone's using it, everyone's doing it. In fact, I would imagine you've seen or felt some, maybe not everyone's vibing, but a couple of different flavors of not delivering value, either by somebody trying to build a full blown prototype or product, or what I call the Death March MVP. So it's fielder's choice. You get to tell a story about a prototype gone wrong.
Yeah, I'll do the full build fiasco. We scoped out the whole
Excellent.
thing. Yeah, I was work. This was a company that's based out in Redmond, Washington, that I worked with for a long time. That went and they backed out. This was back in some of the waterfall days. And zero to end, they spec'd the whole thing out. It was a new version of a platform that people are probably liking to use. They had some really great ideas that they thought they'd jump in there. We didn't ship exactly what was spec because we realized that we had some budget and timing issues that were there. So we did launch late, but we didn't quite launch on budget. And the result was that it was a release of Windows that shall live in infamy. People call it Vista. And if
Hmm.
people remember Vista, it wasn't a lot of fun to live through those days. Everybody waited for the next version of Windows before they upgraded.
Excellent.
So yeah, so there was
So,
that.
so I got the Death March, and of course, for those of you who are older than dirt like myself, that's an actual reference back to Edward Yordan's book called Death March, and it was a similar situation at a similar time frame, Kenny.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing, because again, I kept hearing from sales or I kept hearing from stakeholders, if we don't put all the features in, nobody will buy it. If we don't put all the features in, nobody will buy it. And I would keep trying to negotiate saying, all right, but that's going to increase the time. No, you can't. You have to make the drop dead date. So everyone's working long hours, everyone's burning out, everyone's just, and we get it out the door. We're all exhausted here. So, and the point being is, and then the customer saw it and they were like, man, I mean, it was good, but it wasn't like great, not worth all the, what do you call it, weeping and gnashing of teeth and crying that went on. And it's just sort of funny now because I read stories about newer AI releases. I feel like we're getting back to both of these scenarios. Either somebody's trying to vibe something like a full bump, hey, I'm going to vibe code a full program. I'm just going to do the whole Airbnb experience. Or, hey, you know what? I'm just going to do Salesforce, but I'm going to get it done by next month using vibe coding. So it's almost like we're back to the future here, and we're dealing with these scenarios here. And as product managers, we got to avoid these traps. And I think we felt that and heard that in our recent State of AI for Product Managers report, where again, we found out that everyone's vibe coding. 80% of product managers are using AI regularly in their work. I would imagine some of you are part of that 80% in the audience here. And then here's the one that gets me here. Only 23% have a clear strategy in their organization. Only 34% have a policy here. Only, and again, there's measuring of impact at all. So again, I just feel like this is reflected in what we're hearing about vibe coding. And I think one of the things we want to do as a product manager or a product leader is avoid these type of situations here. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, on this survey as well that you might want to add?
I think what we found is that people are starting to play with it, but they really don't have an idea of where it's going or how to get there.
Yeah.
And so that becomes the challenge.
And I think that gets us to our first poll. Dun, dun, dun. Kim, here's your chance to light up the poll. And here it is. You can choose just one of the bunch. Where are you on the vibe coding curve? Number one, you haven't tried it yet. Number two, you're dabbling on some side projects. Number three, I'm using it for daily work. Number four, I've already building agents and scaffolds. And then the fifth one here is I'm the one asking for the daggone prototypes. So if you're that leader asking for them, you get to click number five.
Ooh, we got a lot of people who are just putting their toe in the water in for this poll, for this
Yeah.
webinar.
Well, don't take the results yet. We'll share.
There's some. All right, we'll give it another few seconds as we got most of the folks have clicked one of our five buttons.
Yep.
If you haven't yet, just find a button and click it.
Go ahead and skew our data.
It's okay. I don't think we've
Alrighty.
called scientific yet. All right, I'm going to end the poll and we can share that with the results.
Alrighty.
Here we
I'm
go.
going to
See, we
share the
got a lot of
results.
people who are 40% of the people haven't even tried it yet. So they aren't quite
Yeah.
down there
So I
yet.
got 41%. I mean, think about that. 41% haven't tried it yet. Um, I got another 28. So it's a pretty interesting. And then some people using for daily work. There's so excellent.
No one's building agents yet, at least not in this crowd.
No one's really building agents or scaffolding products at scale, and nobody is the person asking for it, which is going to be interesting because I think we want to actually talk about the shape of how we're going to approach addressing problems with vibe coding, specifically in vibe prototyping, vibing to learn instead of vibing to earn, as we like to say. And so over the next 60, well, actually the next about 45
40.
minutes, we're going to be going through these motions here. We're going to talk about the demand. We sit at our desk and emails come in, tickets come in, notifications, Slack messages. We're going to talk about setting the context, understanding the problem, making some assumptions, setting a win condition, creating a narrative, and then creating the prototype. So we're going to talk about these 9 levels and of understanding the problem and pulling it from a low resolution demand to a high resolution decision at the end of is this the right thing to build? Is this the right direction to move into? And it starts, of course, with our favorite, dangerous animal product management, the hippo. All right. The highest paid person's opinion. Notice that they're not evil; they are just certain. And the hippo in this case for today, and this is going to be our use case we're going to follow for the next 45 minutes or so. Build me a dashboard that shows everything AI and its ROI. And here's where they got their inspiration. Look at that. They took our report and weaponized it. And now the hippo said, listen, I want you to show me every piece of data on my AI investments here. And here's the scenario. Now, I would imagine in the comments there, who here's seen an email that looks just like this? All right. Email comes in. Hey, I just read the Productside AI, PM report. Tool spend is way up, but measurable lift is not to be found. The board has just asked me for the ultimate inconvenient question. What business value are we getting with our AI investment? So, of course, now the hippo's problem becomes our problem. And of course, our boss is asking for an executive AI productivity dashboard by Friday. Because after all, we can vibe code, right? So while the hippo or our boss's boss has thought they asked a very clear question, normally what comes in is a demand that looks like this. And normally, if you're just vibing just off the cuff, your vibe coded effort is going to look like this as well. So, how do we not design a Rube Goldberg disaster like this? It's going to take 5 motions. So, the first motion, and we're going to talk about that, is setting the context, which means, hey, understand, gather your data and understand and set your context. Then shape a hypothesis. Then scaffold the narrative. Then let's do a touch and feel. And then let's go ahead and understand the solution more completely. And you'll notice along here, we're going to be talking about different technologies we're going to bring in along the way. So we'll be talking about chatbots and projects. We'll be talking about notebooks and skills. We'll be talking about different design systems. And we'll actually be showing them to me as well, including low code systems and coding agents here. And this is not a maturity ladder. This is a clarity. So you're trading off clarity with each one of these motions you take. So let's set the context because good context beats a clever prompt every time. So how do we narrow down the ask? How do we I mean, I think Kenny, you and I both teach this in our optimal product management is we have that exercise on people walking in the door with solution speak. And one of our jobs is to go ahead and try to get behind that and understand the why and get that into the problem space. I would imagine you've seen that or consulted on that more than once.
I have, yeah, I have. We don't want to just implement something that was asked for, but we actually want to understand what's driving the request for what's being asked for, and what are the true job that we're doing for someone, and what some of the problems are that are getting in the way of them performing that job.
Right. Now, the good thing is AI can be very helpful in doing this. Again, within setting your context, there's 3 steps equally important to the other. The first one is casting the ask. Remember, we're talking about vibe coding. We're talking about vibe prototyping, but we're talking about coding. So it means we have to cast some things. We have to categorize things. We have to label some things. So how can we do that easily without turning it into a data science project or becoming a chief engineer project? From that, how do we find the facts to fill in the gaps of what we don't understand? So, for example, if they're asking for dashboards, what do we know about dashboards? What can we augment our understanding about dashboards? And then persist the ask. And this is really going to be an important theme. As you're moving away from just prompting in your chatbot and you're moving into vibe coding or vibe prototyping, persisting your information, in other words, saving it as files in organized different types of organizing surfaces, such as projects, such as repos, such as shared directories. This is going to become very important because the coding is no good unless we have some persistence from these five motions. So let's go ahead and just start with the chatbot. Let's go ahead and talk about casting. So here's our email again. All right. And so we need to break this down and get behind it a little bit here. We need to get into understand the problem here. Now, I've already written a bunch of prompts to do this. So for example, here's my incoming request breakdown prompt. And you'll notice, by the way, I'm starting in my chatbot. I'm not even starting in my coding tool yet. So where you start is also going to be important here because you're going to be able to create artifacts and context. So for example, if I'm in Copilot, I just brought in the screenshot and I just brought in the prompt. And all I have to do is go ahead and it'll actually take this email or Slack message. Notice it's starting to classify, cast, and label things. So it talks about what it is. This is going to become important context when we build our prototype here. Here's the ask. Here's the underlying problem. Here's the sentiment in the subtext. All right. Here are the must-haves, the nice-haves, the hard negatives. So now what you need to do is take this and put this in a file somewhere and start creating a pantry. But you see, it's not that hard to do. You could do the same thing. And so, for example, one of the things you could do is go ahead and create a project in a tool like ChatGPT, which I did here, where you'll notice that I had the state of the AI report. I have the executive briefs. Oh, what are these things here? These are research that I wanted to do here. So let me show you the research real fast. I think I can show it to you real quick. I'm going to go here. I thought I had it here, but let me go. Let me show you deep research on Copilot. Let me show you deep research in Gemini. So one of the things I talked about was filling in the blanks. So not only do we have to go ahead and create context in the form of casting the ask, we want to fill in the gaps as well. So here I use the deep research tool or the research tool within Copilot. And basically, it went ahead and created this document here. It tells me everything I need to know about B2B product productivity, a product management productivity dashboard for executive, for executive product leaders. Nice thing about this tool, using the researcher tool in M365 Copilot, it gives citations. So I'm able to create a PDF from that. And I was able to do something very similar here in Gemini, and I think Gemini does a good job as well. Same prompt. And then again, ran a similar report citations, gave me a different point of view. So you may not have access to both these tools or any of those tools, but now what I've done is I've gone ahead and done research. I've gone ahead and cast the ask. I basically broke down the ask into something that's more machine learnable. All I need to do is persist these. So I can put them in a project, I can put them in a file, I can put them in a notebook. And in fact, there's plenty of ways to do all this, plenty of tools to help do this. So you start with your chatbots, but you can work with notebooks. Notebook LM is another great tool. Gemini Gems and Claude projects or ChatGPT projects are another way to persist. For research tools, pretty much all of these chatbots have a deep research capability. If you don't believe me, for example, I'll just go to ChatGPT and I'll go right here and you'll see that I can do deep research. All right. And it's pretty much the same for all the other tools as well. Copilot does it a little different in that they have its own researcher. So that's their deep research. So these are tools that help fill in the blanks, but then you can persist the ask there as well. Getting any thoughts on filling in the blanks for the context?
No, I think what you want to do is you want to understand that space better,
Yeah,
capture what is understood, and then put it in a place that you can use later on as you
right,
start to go deeper into what's this set of coding, what's this
right.
project start to look like.
And by the way, some of your context gathering, hunting and gathering, is going to include information about your own product, could be about information about your competitors. It could be information about how certain things work. So it doesn't just have to be deep research on things you don't know. It could be also finding tools that you have. Oh, and one thing, Kenny, that I've noticed when doing competitive research, as you look for your competitors using deep research, you should do the same for yourself, only with external artifacts. And here's why. Then you have an apples to apples comparison of yourself of how the external world views you, you based on the same deep research standards that you did for your competitors. So anyway, build your pantry, get things in the kitchen, get the data persisted here. I know we haven't gone into vibing yet. Trust me, this is going to save you a lot of time and agony because now we can start shaping hypotheses. Now we can start creating what I call a testable bet rather than a hunch. And it's the difference between guessing at a solution and framing a bet. Now, the reason why I say bet is because a bet has limits. A bet is a known quantity. It has you usually reduce the risk on this. It has a known win condition. And it becomes very obvious when you're moving in the wrong direction right away. So, one of the ways things we're going to do is not boil the ocean, and we're going to go ahead and frame the bet. And you can do that by taking your context that you had, and you can use a prompt just to put it in a hypothesis, or you can use a skill. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with agent skills, this was a standard Anthropic came out with back in November. And really, what you're doing is taking things that you prompt about or process quite a bit and basically turning into best way to describe it is to turn it into repeatable either prompts or repeatable processes here at the point of a fingertip. Now that's a little bit abstract here, so I should probably show you how I gather more context information on my vibe coding. So for example, this is a skill, again, for understanding the incoming message. So that big old prompt that I showed you in the past, now I don't need to do that. Now I can do something like this. You'll notice that here I am. I've already done the screenshot here, and I just go ahead and incoming. Here's the skill that I import into my system. It can run that same breakdown and casting. Because if I'm going to do this often, I don't want to have to keep cutting and pasting the prompt. So
So it's
now what it
basically a way of reusing a specific prompt, right, Dean?
yeah, and that's the whole point of persistence here.
Yeah.
Because yeah, and so this is so look, and here's your breakdown again. Now the advantage is I can use other skills to further eviscerate it there. Now in this case here, I think what I'm just going to do is just something really simple. And by the way, this works the same way on Copilot, only you would use an agent at this point in time to do that. But let's go ahead and chat GPT and just say, based on our incoming request, what are some ripe solution opportunities here? So we haven't given it a whole lot, but notice I'm inside a project. So that project means it has the state of the AI, it has the research that we did already saved. And so when it's answering this question, it's answering it in light of those other sources here. In fact, it talks about the sources that it can use here. So here's one, an AI mapping gap value radiator. So notice it didn't say dashboard. All right. This is a leadership decision radiator. Outcome to AI ratio view is another. Intervention recommendation moment. Faltering team drill down here. Activity, AI activity theater alert. I love that one here. All right. So we get a choice here. Okay. And I think what I really want to do is let's go ahead and frame a narrative. What do we want to do? Actually, let me do this. What are your top three? So again, notice now, Dean, can I do this when I'm in Claude Code? Yes, you can do exactly what I'm doing here. You can use the file system. Can I do it in CoWork? Yes. Can I do this in Codex? Yes. Right now, I'm just showing you different tools that you can start out with. So it's got build the radiator, do the drill down, focus on the intervention. And I like that. So I think what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get a suggestion for a solution on these three into a single solution that meets the underlying needs. Again, remember this is part of a project. It has all the research. It understands that other context. Now, again, why am I not running this in my coding platform or Surface yet? Really, I don't need to. I can have a conversation here. Can I do it? Yeah, I've done that before. I've done it all in one place. So it's thinking about that. And here's our value radiator. So I think we got an idea for a solution here. And so I think the last thing we want to do then is put our solution in a format where we can go ahead and socialize it and have some conversations about it here. I sort of like what we got here. So I'm going to go ahead and just have it fill out pretty much this solution hypothesis here. So let me show you what this means here. Basically, I has the if then. It talks about we'll know the winning. We know this will work when it hits these conditions here. And it talks about how it's going to measure it. And there we go. Now I have something that I can share both with people and the machine, that it knows what the solution is, who the persona is, what the goal is, what the obstruction is, how we know whether we're going to be successful or not, and then some of the unknowns as well. Any thoughts there, Kenny?
Yeah, how do we know what our riskiest assumptions are in building this?
You could, for example, you could do a step before this. So, for example, you could say something like, hey, run the right problem, what do you call framing canvas, and then stack rank the what would you call it? Top opportunities exploit. Right? We could say instead of the problem framing canvas, we just could say the Osterwalder the proposition is that the customer circle and exploit based on the top pains, gains, and jobs to be done. So we could do that. And we could even say stack rank these.
Yeah.
Now, you could look at this and it'd be just a bunch of garbage. But again, we're in the project. Think about all the source files we have here, right? We got all these source files here. All right. We've got the instructions that we set up from the first motion where we basically cast the need. It has this information here about the dashboards here. So as I make those asks, it's going to make it in context. And as I get done with these prompts, I can take the output here. And this is something that's really interesting is we can go ahead, all right, and say, all right, here's something else that you can do. Create a shareable, oops, this shareable document. We can add this project on understanding. And so what it's going to do, it's going to create an artifact that we can add to the project that we can download and put into Claude Code. So again, you can start building your own tools and building your own context. So that's what they mean with context engineering here. There's different ways to do that as well. Alrighty. Now, once you've got all that scaffolding, once you've got that context engineering, once you've got that solution that you're guessing at, And it is just a guess. What I want us to start doing is seeing or visualizing the story, because this is probably the most important thing we're going to do in vibe coding. Instead of writing a full spec, and I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, well, we're going to do test driven development with this. You know, I forget, I just read some article saying, well, I think we should go into eval driven development here. And I said, not yet. I'm not saying you don't do that in production. I'm saying for the prototype, I want a minimum viable narrative, a great narrative of the human experience of what they're trying to accomplish with our solution is going to help us get some great results and great prototypes across a variety of tools. So again, across a variety of tools here, and I'm going to show you how that works. Oops. Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing again we're going to do is we want to shape a story, who the person is. Now we just did that in that last prompt I had where we talked about the solution hypotheses. We want to set the stage. So now we want to do this in a set of beats. And then what we want to do is called feed the beast. So these AI tools like Lovable, like Stitch, like Claude Code, those are the beast. And they don't have a whole lot of context. They can't infer who the user is, what the situation is. So we're going to need to feed that beast, and we want to feed it to them in the form of a narrative and not a specification. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you that in the next motion. But let's go ahead and show you some of this. Where did I put some of that? Give me a second here as my mouse dances on me. Oops, no,
Yep,
no, not yet. So, for example, I could just simply, and again, you could do this in any browser. I'm just doing this in Copilot right now because it's being very responsive and fast. Apparently, it knows that I'm in a demo today. All right. And now what I'm saying is, hey, take this story here and create a minimum viable narrative. It needs to include a setup, the user situation, a trigger, a reframe, in other words, interventions in this case, a signal, a choice, and a decision, and some learning. Again, we're building a prototype. We want feedback on this. And so here's our minimum viable narrative. Now, this narrative is very portable. And you can do a lot of really cool things with this narrative here. But again, what I really want you to do is get to the point where you get to this narrative. So your solution hypotheses and this narrative are going to become two very strong signals, two very strong files you want to persist to make this work. Plenty of tools to do that with. Okay. So in fact, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use these tools to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and actually visualize what our prototype's going to look like. So let me go ahead and pull another screen over here. Now, these things take time to develop. So I did those last night. But here in a product called Stitch, I was able to generate minimum viable prototype screenshots, a design. I went to a design tool instead of going straight into something like Lovable or something here. Why? Because I can sit there and work with it. For example, you'll notice that while this is the final set of screens, I had a lot of failures initially. Alls I gave it was, again, alls I gave it was the minimum viable narrative, and I gave it a design guide, a design guide of how I want to look and feel. And so it took a while. I had to put in quite a few prompts. So I decided to talk about these screens were wrong and but I finally nudged this to perfection here. I finally got this to a point where it's actually something that, something worth seeing here. Let me do it like this. Let's see. Let me get a little bit smaller here. Oh, one more. Okay. So again, not bad. Now that's one way of doing your design. The other way of doing the design is you could use it with ChatGPT with a connector to a tool like Figma. And again, got some very nice Very nice production here. I did have to prompt it more than once because some of the design initially was not right. For example, I didn't like the initial alert board. I didn't like these actions that they were single. This board didn't even exist in our narrative. Once I saw the mock-ups, Kenny, I said, "Oh my gosh, we should put in something that where Kanban meets what do you call it, a racy." So it's a combination of the two. And I said, "Wouldn't that show?" So now it shows the work behind it, and then a what happens on the decision capturing the feedback. Claude Design did the same thing. It gave me, in fact, it gave me a working prototype, is what it gave me. Walked it through. Let me do some things here. Go ahead and pick an intervention. Go ahead and improve the plan. Now, again, this did the same thing. The original version only had four screens, and it didn't do a good job. This screen was really sparse. Really, it wasn't good. So one of the things I had to do was prompt it. But you notice I'm working in a design tool right now instead of a prototyping tool because the focus here is getting the design figured out. And again, there's plenty of tools that you can do this with. So for example, Stitch, Figma, Visly, Reloom, Claude Design. I showed you three of those. Because now once you have the design, now we can go ahead and use a low code tool. Now we can finally get into our coding tool and saying, don't tell me, show me. Now, low code tools like Lovable and Beat 44, they all have some rules of the road here. A narrative in a winning condition with perhaps an export of the design is going to give you much better results than just prompting and saying, here's an email from my boss, give me a dashboard, which is what most of us do. It creates a reusable design then. It deals with the riskiest assumptions. It has guardrails in it that we can put in. So it has all these things that help us do it here. And it's all done through a minimum viable narrative instead of a full specification.
Hey, Dina, some of those tools that you're using gave you screen by screen by screen. What prevents that from becoming the solution rather than letting the code
Well, I
interpret it?
think when I was working with the design tools, instead of looking at features, I was able to sit there and say, first of all, by looking at it visually first, it helped me find gaps. I mean, think about how we used to do it, Kenny. We used to sit there and just sketch it out with on paper with wireframes
Yeah.
and pencil. So all it's really doing is being an AI assisted digital scratch pad. Almost think of it like a whiteboard here. And so what it's doing is helping us shape this so we can look around the corner and into the future. So, for example, just giving it the narrative, just giving it the HTML that was created, I think by this one was by Figma. I got a nice low code design here that I could actually run now. So this is in Lovable. Gave me this screen here. Then we have the drill down screen. We have the decide, the intervention, and then we have the capture.
Now, is this the code from Lovable or is this just the
This is
narrative?
this is Lovable. This is
Oh, okay.
Lovable generated,
They're right.
and all I did was give it the narrative.
Hmm.
All I did is said all I did is I gave it the narrative, and I gave it an HTML file, or in this case, a Markdown file of what was generated by. I think I gave what was generated by Figma for this
Figma.
one here.
Okay.
By the way, you can do this in Gemini as well. As long as you go into the canvas, so when you click here, you go into canvas mode and use a thinking set of reasoning here, you can actually create a pretty nice prototype. In fact, here's the prototype here shown larger here. Now, here's the trick. Whenever I use these low code tools here, all right, to create the prototype, an actual working prototype, there's a few things that I put in here. So you'll notice that the killer prompt that I gave all of these was, give me a second, moment of, you notice I had to keep working on this. They didn't give me the first time here. But here's the killer, and this is again. I'm about to generate a fully functional, highly interactive, premium grade HTML5 single page application. Now you notice all I said was create for me a fully functional yet throwaway. There's something there important. Fully functional, if you say that, it tries building it the right way with all the guardrails. If you say fully functional yet throwaway, and then self-contained HTML5, now you have a prototype that's contained in one HTML file, all the JavaScript included, that you can now pass around for people to look and feel. So that's one way you can do that and do deployment very cheap. Now, this gives you an advantage of doing this again because you can download the HTML here. You can download things. You can do it with any of these tools here that I mentioned. But you'll notice all that production was created by just giving it the narrative and giving it the design that I came up with here. And then finally, we want to shake out the solution here. And again, one of the reasons why we use a full-blown coding tool like Codex, like Claude Code, like Cursor, like VS Code, like so many of these other tools here, is that we can introduce some validation on things such as feasibility as well, branching logic, logging, evidence. In other words, we can build something that we can actually deploy in a much more mature sense just in a clickable HTML5 app. Now, again, rather than just open up Claude Code and say, here's the email, build me a dashboard. The way you get around your first few times shooting your foot off with Claude Code or any of these tools is you create three different files. One is a README, which is the context. Now, Kenny, you want to take one guess how I generated? You want to take one guess how I obtain these three files to put in my repo?
Use your chat assistants.
Yeah, I used my chat and it just created these files for me. It created a contract, what to build, how to build it, what the guardrails are, and a constitution. So again, because what happens when you have these files then, so for example, let me go here. So for example, here's a file that I haven't built anything with, right? Okay. So now I can say Claude. Let's see. Yeah. I go into Claude here and I say init. By just saying init, it's going to pick up these files and understand what the project is. Now, this is going to take some while to cook. So I built one last night and I had to go back a few times. And so I took what we got from Lovable and I improved it. So for example, I went ahead and improved the navigation. I went ahead with a drill down on the individual boxes there. I actually put a simulation engine in on the back end to see what it looked like. I actually create what do you call it? Synthesized data to see what data from Jira would look like. So then I can just sit there and then run it. So here's the first one here. Let's see, open index. Oh, here it is. You can see I did the command before. All right, index two. There we go. So it's going to open up both. So here's the first prototype. Oh, look, it looks just like the Google prototype, right? So that's the HTML I gave it there. But after working with the coding agent on adding complexity and then saying, hey, I want to move more towards what I had between Figma and Claude code or Claude design. So now I have a much better prototype. For example, I can click on details if a team's failing. Look at all the touch points. So think about what this does. It tells me in the prototype, what are we going to show in terms of measuring what a good team is? So when I pick a team that's failing here, how do I understand that it's using a lot of AI? It's creating a lot of artifacts. It's using AI and we're not getting anything in terms of outcomes. It helps me then think about and simulate the interventions. Have the team, work with the group. All right. We can then see what the interventions, we had a much better looking board here on the plan, and we get a much better decision. Not only that, Kenny, we can actually sit there and have people say, hey, based off this prototype, should we pursue the idea, pivot, punt the idea, or pause it, and they can give our feedback. So now we can
Hey, Dean, if
capture.
we're getting this close with Cloud Code, what stops us from just shipping this?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that have to do with security and infrastructure. I think again, remember we said throwaway code. Okay.
Yeah.
We vibe to learn and not to earn. Um, that's a whole different conversation that we have to have in a different webinar of how do you vibe as part of the engineering team? Because now think about it. I got to bring in all those other things I need to do, all those other tenants that I need to get involved with. So in terms of, okay, there's security things here. There's authentication we have to worry about. There's compliance issues here. We got to put all sorts of guardrails around here. So anyway, plenty of tools to do that with. Claude Code, Codex, Anti-Gravity, VS Code with extensions, Cursor. I've used them all. They all work pretty much the same way. But again, we vibe to learn and not to earn. We want to get ourselves in a pivot, punt, or pursue where we can make a decision where we're going to spend our money. And then again, we did through 5 motions here. So, Kim, it's time for the second poll. Let's see what people learned. And here's your poll. And while you're doing that poll, somebody asked for a link to some of the libraries. So I'm going to go find those for you. So while you're filling out the polls, people, I'm going to give you a couple links to some of the repos that I referenced.
We'll give it a few more seconds for people to answer, and then we will post the results of the poll.
Yep.
I'll give them a couple more. Click a button. As Dean is posting his GitHub repositories that you
And we're going
have
to have some
been
Productside ones
agented.
soon. So
Yeah,
they're
there we
going to
go.
be
Good.
awesome. All righty.
All right, I got most of the people have jumped in, so let's share the results
Yeah, let's
out.
share. Whoops.
Oh,
Got an error message here. Let's share. Just sharing is caring. Come on, share the results. Here we go.
there we go.
All right. Right.
You got it,
Okay. So
Brian?
yeah, thank you. Let's be product aware. Let's name this risky assumption here. I'm going to scaffold the context. Nothing yet, but I know what to watch for there. So we have a pretty good mix here.
Yeah. People picked up different parts depending on probably where they started from, so that's excellent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. So Kenny, I think what we want to do is
So while people are getting ready for their questions and answers, again, you can throw those into the Q&A. You can throw them into chat if you've got a question that came up during the course of Dean's demoing and vibing. Let us know. In the meantime, if you want that State of the AA product management report, we just put a link to it in the chat, or if you like doing QR codes, there's one on the screen right now. And you can, as soon as you fill out your information, you'll get the whole glory detail of that AI for Product Management report, the State of AI for Product Management
hmm,
report that we just recently did and had a webinar actually a few weeks ago around it. So you can also search productside.com to get a replay of that webinar. That would be interesting too.
and that's
Take a
not
look at that
all.
report. We've also got some training. We're actually doing some in-person training in August in Chicago. So people who want to spend a late August day in Chicago or a few days if you happen to be in the
With me,
area.
I'm teaching that one. So
All right, and
yeah.
Dean will be running more vibe coding during that training, so you'll get some
Well,
basic
here's the
understanding.
thing, when you come to the live training, it's all this stuff, since I'm stuck in the city, it's what happens during lunch and after hours that there's some real vibing happens there. Upcoming webinars.
We've got a webinar that talks about what that builder PM or that PM that's doing some of that vibe coding is doing, and how do you prevent from that becoming your job, and your job really becomes you maintain your job as understanding.
Yep.
what's going on. You can do that. And then if you're not going to be in Chicago, but you still want to get some training, I'm doing a live online course in the beginning of August. Dean is doing a live online course in September. We've also got some specific live online AI product management courses that are happening in July, and then another one in September. So
Yep. And I'll be
you'll
going into great detail on that. And it's time for questions and
and
answers.
answers. Yeah. So if you haven't put a question in, please put one into the chat. We'll stop sharing slides and just show ourselves. So you can
Give me
do
a
that.
second. Yeah.
Well, there we go. So we're here for you to ask some questions if people have one. So one question that came in is, what's the best way to gather user feedback during a vibe coding?
Right.
Um,
Well, you'll notice in that very last exercise, when I was using code, I actually built that in so people, when they got to the last screen, they could actually deliver feedback live there. So, in other words, it's one of the advantages of using something other than Lovable or Beat, 44 or Bolt, is that you can use, a more robust tool like Claude Code or Codex, where you can actually build in the feedback mechanism at the end, where then
okay,
people
yeah.
can fire that back. You can collect analytics better on those. So, in other words, you can bake in analytic tracking as well. So, I think, that's one of the advantages of to using a full-blown coding agent over a low-code tool.
Got it. Another one just came in that said, how do you deal with or explain to management who might want to port this, finished vibe coding project directly to shipping
Yeah,
code?
well, I think a lot of this has to do with framing ahead of time. So, for example, one of the things I didn't show you is when you take that minimum viable narrative, you can actually go into something like the what do you call it? The create feature of what do you call it? There's a create feature within Copilot, and you could actually do an explainer video. So before you show that to them, you can actually create an explainer video using that narrative.
Uh,
Remember the portable narrative on step two
yeah.
and three? That narrative can also be used to create some very easy and inexpensive narratives in terms of an explainer video, or you can just sit there and make sure you set the boundaries of what this is. Maybe you want to have a splash screen saying, "Welcome to our prototype. Let me set the limits here." But a lot
Got
of
it.
that has to do with just framing the conversation.
And Dean, one of the topics you didn't talk about that actually does come up in vibe coding is this notion of tokens and running out of tokens. And how do I
Yeah.
manage to run through the 5 steps that you talked about
Did you
without
notice me using my
spiraling?
chatbot quite a bit before I got to the coding? Did you notice me setting up the files? That's going to save you quite a bit in tokens. Like I said, you could do this all in Claude Code or Codex. I could have done the whole thing. I would have used 3 times as much tokens. So by
Got
using the
it.
deep research, by using my chatbot, by using repeatable skills, by using projects, and then creating these artifacts, and then finally, and then and only then dropping them in to the directory, of where I want to either what I want to use for my low code or my coding agent. Then I limited how much tokens got burnt.
So what you're saying is the most expensive token tool is that Claude Code or Lovable or something like that. And if we can
There, there
if we can pre-wire it with some of the other learning that we do in some of the lower cost token
yeah. Go
tools
run
like
deep research from your chatbot versus your coding agent and look at the difference between the burn rate.
yeah, so those
That's why I
coding
use the
tools burn a
design
lot of
tool.
tokens.
That's
Mhm.
why I use the design tool in the middle there. I didn't have to use the design tool, but design tools have design smarts built into them. And you notice I was descriptive, not prescriptive with that. So again, that's another expensive area. So I did burn some tokens with the design tool, but not as much asking a coding agent to go blow into that.
So use the most efficient agent we have for the task that we're trying to
Yeah, so you'll
address.
notice that's why I picked these tools was some part of that was a matter of efficiency, but also the ability to work with them on what they were good at.
Got it. And I've got one more question that came in. Let's be honest. How often do we actually have time and deadlines to walk through this whole 5 motion process?
I got through it in an hour.
There you
If you
go.
don't got you don't got an hour? Like, hey, look, it's probably going to know end to end with all the designs. It's going to take you 2 hours. It's going to take you a morning. All
Yeah,
right. Look, 2 hours max. If you can't afford 2 hours max on that, got different problems you're working with.
got it. All right. Well, I think we've hit the top of the hour, so I'm going to thank everybody for their participation, their questions, everything else. There are some tools that were thrown into your chat about how to follow us. If you do have follow-up questions, I would encourage you to go to productside.com, find out when we have webinars, find out when we have training, participate, become part of the community that we are building as part of these webinars. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of the week.